Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural commentator. And today we're going to be continuing on our look at law and order from a Christian perspective. And last time I tackled this topic, I was talking about the iPhone thief who simply calmly walked into an Apple store out in California and systematically went from iPhone to iPhone, tearing the cords off of the iPhone and shoving the iPhones in his pocket. And all the store employees and all of the customers, they all just watched this man methodically go from item to item, from merchandise to merchandise, stealing in broad daylight. Then the thief walks out of the store, and lo and behold, there is a patrol car, a police car, right in front of the iPhone and Apple store, and the thief just walks past the patrol car, gets in his car, and drives away. And no one did a thing to stop the thief. And I said in my video last time that this is a breakdown of basic civilization and law and order. And then I went to the scripture, I went to Romans 13, that says that God has established order in society, and that it is God's will that there be order in society, and that in fact the police and the officials of any society, of any town, of any city, of any nation, they are there for the purpose of maintaining order and law and order. And they're in fact called servants of God, deacons of God. In fact, the Greek word is deacon of God, a servant of God, for the purpose of exercising God's punishment on the wrongdoer. So this breakdown of law and order is no way the will of God. And we're having a crisis in our country today because we have politicians, we have district attorneys, we have lawyers, we have the legal system, we have officials who are simply not maintaining law and order. And that is contrary to the will of God. This has to change. And unfortunately, we are seeing some change taking place. For example, in San Francisco, now they're beginning to rethink their approach to law and order from just simply letting people go to actually doing something about it. Also, up in Oregon, for example, they're now saying that, yes, indeed, I guess we do need the police after all. Instead of defunding the police and downplaying the importance of police, I guess we do need police, and we need to rehire more policemen after the insanity of the last 4 years, starting in the summer of 2020, when basically riots were allowed to happen. Basically, the police were told to stand down and allow the rioters to not only riot in the streets, burn down buildings, burn down a police station in Minnesota, but they were allowed to basically do whatever they wanted to do. And the city officials just let them do that and gave them justification for doing that. And so that kind of insanity in some places now is being rolled back, and that's a good sign. But we still have the problem of thieves walking into stores and thinking they can get away with stealing in broad daylight. We had an incident here this past weekend of a store in Detroit, downtown Detroit, Woodward Avenue, a very busy, bustling place, not at all in a bad section of town. There are bad sections of Detroit where you wouldn't want to go, and if someone stole something, you would not think anything of it. But this is Woodward Avenue. This is supposed to be the new Renaissance, reborn section where they've done a lot of improvement. They've done a lot of investing in this section. And now you have some thieves walking into, and this store was a Lululemon clothing store. And thieves walked in broad daylight, took merchandise, and walked out. And we're seeing this all over the place. Now, there is a controversy taking place because out in California again, there was a store where thieves came right in the door, and this is very common now in our cities because of the insanity of the defund the police movement. and the insanities of the George Soros-sponsored district attorneys who will not prosecute crime. And we see this happening all over the place because, again, if you encourage something, if you give justification for something, if you make excuses for criminals, you're going to get more criminals. You're going to get more thieves. You're going to get more people who are saying, hey, they're letting us do this, so let's do this. They're letting us walk into places and steal merchandise, so let's just go in and steal the merchandise. And so the thieves are coming out of the woodwork and doing this more and more and more. And it will continue to increase until people begin to change their minds about this insanity of defund the police and this insanity of saying that people who are victims of systemic oppression deserve to be able to walk into a store and steal anything they want and get away with it. This has to change. This is a breakdown of civilization. This is a sign of decay of a civilization, and we're seeing that right here in our own country, the United States, in especially some of the bigger cities, a breakdown in civilization. You're seeing the crumbling, the collapse of social norms and structures, and it's happening right before our eyes. And so today I want to look at a investigation. I want to look at this report from NBC News, and then I will comment on it as this report unfolds, because this is really bad. This is saying that not only can people come in and steal, but some of these corporations are so woke, are so catering to the radical left, that they don't even want their employees to call the police. They don't want anything to happen to the thief. They don't want anything to take place that might cast them in a negative light as far as being on the radical left, the woke, defund the police movement. They want to cater to the liberals and pander to the so-called marginalized people groups, so that they basically are excusing thieves from stealing from their stores. And we'll see that in the report. So let's roll that clip, and I will make commentary on it.
No, seriously, get out.
Two Georgia women say they were fired from their jobs at Lululemon after calling police to report this robbery, which one of them caught on camera.
No.
So the management of Lululemon, this clothing store, fired two workers for calling the police on thieves who just brazenly came into the store and started stealing clothing. So here are these workers. They're in the store. They're taking care of customers. They're trying to make sales. That's their job. They come to work every day. They do their job. They leave. They go home. They have a life. And they came into work one day, and all of a sudden some thieves came in, these gangs of thieves that all of a sudden just show up. We see them all over the country, in some of the bigger cities especially, but even in smaller towns and everywhere. They just show up and they start taking merchandise off the shelves, taking clothes, stealing shoes, anything they can get their hands on. And the workers are shouting at them, hey, stop that. They're not even trying to stop them. They're not physically trying to grab them. They're not trying to do anything that would be, you might say, heroic, but they simply called the police on these thieves like you're supposed to do. And Lululemon, the management, says you're fired because our policy is you can't even call the police on them. You just let them take whatever they want and just we'll deal with it internally.
Jennifer Ferguson and Rachel Rogers describing to NBC affiliate 11 Alive Atlanta the horrifying moments the merchandise at the Peachtree Corner store was stolen.
They swiped until they couldn't hold any more product and ran out the door.
We didn't really feel very protected or know what else to do.
The women say
the common sense thing to do is to call the police. The common sense thing to do is to get the police over there. And I don't blame them. If someone is committing a crime right in front of you, what do? You call the police. I don't care what the policy is at Lululemon or whatever the name of this store is. I don't care what the policy is. If they're committing a crime in front of you, your natural instinct, your natural reaction is to call for help. You don't know what's going to happen. Hey, if they know that you're not going to call the police, if they know you're going to do nothing at all except sit there and watch them, they will come in and grab a whole handful and go out and stuff it in their car, and then they'll come back to the same store and steal more handfuls, and then they'll go back and forth from their car to the store, knowing that there will not be police called, knowing that there will not be police showing up to stop them, and they can take the whole store if they have space in their car or truck to do that. And so you're going to encourage more of this theft if you don't let the employees at the store at least call the police. Now, these women, it doesn't look like they did anything other than maybe shout and say, hey, get out, which is good. I mean, that's a start. The first thing you do when you see somebody committing a crime in front of you, you say, hey, stop that, and you may not want to go up and try to confront them physically. You may not want to try to stop them physically. If you're a man, you may want to try to do that depending on the situation. But these women were holding back. They weren't trying to block the entrance. They weren't trying to grab the merchandise. They weren't trying to hold these criminals. They simply were shouting, hey, stop that. And then after they left, they called the police, and they got fired for calling the police. How insane is this? This shows again the insanity of our modern world when you have these radical, leftist, woke, Democrat, liberal prosecutors and corporate bosses and politicians telling people that we need to defund the police, we need to back away, we need to let people do what they're going to do. Why is it that it always seems to be the people who are the so-called, quote, marginalized people, the so-called oppressed people in the community, the sort of, you might call it, intersectional hierarchy people who are given a carte blanche to basically come in and rob the store, and then given a carte blanche to basically do it again and not stopped. And if they are arrested, then they're given a slap on the wrist, or they're just let go and say, well, there will be a court date on this date, but if you want to come. Just treating these people with kid gloves when they should be locked up and put in jail and kept away from the general public because they're not safe to be around. They're committing crimes in society. There's a breakdown of law and order, and this is not right. This is not the will of God, that this kind of outrageous breakdown of civilization occur. And if people are going to be casual about this, and especially if these corporate management types are going to begin to set policies and saying, don't do a thing to stop the crime, don't even call the police. What in the world are we saying to criminals if we don't even call the police? We're saying, come back again the same day and get some more.
Were fired from their jobs after they decided to call the police about the shoplifting, something they say they were told is against company policy. So what are they supposed to do instead?
You kind of clear a path for whatever they're going to do, and then after it's over, you scan a QR code.
Rogers, who says she's worked at the company for...
You just clear a path for what they're going to do. Can you imagine this? You clear a path for what they're supposed to do. Make it easy for them. In fact, if they drop something, you might want to say, go up and help give them their merchandise and send them on their way. It's just insanity.
5 years, claims that the store has been dealing with thefts for months, recalling another incident.
Someone sent me a picture of the front entrance table, and I was like, oh my gosh, we just sold all the product, good job. And they were like, no, someone just came in and stole everything.
Somebody just came in and stole everything from the store. And these are higher end stores. So, it's not just like a $10 pair of jeans from Walmart. These are $100, $200. These are hundreds of dollars of clothing individually, and they're coming in and grabbing a whole handful, as much as they can carry. And, you're supposed to just clear a path? You're supposed to just let the thieves go? And you're not even supposed to call the police and report a theft? Again, what if these thieves get onto the idea that, hey, nobody's going to call the police? We go out to our car casually, grab our stuff, take it out, put it in the trunk, come back in for more, and do this all day long. Why? Because nobody's going to call the police. There will be no law enforcement. We can do whatever we want to do because these corporate managers have decided that there's a policy that says do not call the police for whatever publicity reasons, to try to be superior as in the wokeness department. I don't know, but it's just in total sanity.
But this was the first time she knows of someone at the store calling police, which local authorities confirm. The Fayette County Sheriff's Office says 3 men have been charged with theft by shoplifting and theft by receiving stolen property from that incident. And they're currently in the Fayette County Jail. Videos of brazen shoplifting have gone viral from stores across the country. And it's common practice for retailers to tell their employees.
And also another question this raises, why is this only basically mostly black individuals stealing things from stores? Why is that? I guess you can't ask that question. In fact, you can't even notice the racial characteristics of these thieves because they're never reported that way. For example, in the Detroit incident, in the thief in downtown Detroit, there were, I think, 4 or 5 women that came in the Lululemon store on Woodward Avenue in Detroit. And if you read the article, it says 3 to 5 women entered the store and took items. It doesn't even report on the racial component at all. And why is that? Well, because the narrative is you're not supposed to say anything against a so-called oppressed people group, which is total nonsense. And so what happens is if you look into all of these smash and grab incidents, if you look into all of these thieves, Lululemon, Apple stores, all over the place, you're going to find that 99% of all of these are made up of black thieves. Now, why is that? Why is that? Why is it that law enforcement and politicians and district attorneys and the whole legal system, why are we catering to a segment of society and allowing these thieves to go free and have no consequences for their action? Why are we doing that? Well, perhaps, according to the liberal, democratic, leftist thinking, there are too many black people in prison already. And so we don't want to incarcerate any black people in prison because we already have a disproportionate amount of black people in prison. And so the solution is we just don't jail or imprison any black people for crimes, because that would then tilt the disproportionate amount of black people in prison even more. So the solution, they think, is to simply let them go on a crime spree. Well, that is not the solution because that's not law and order. And you can't have a society surviving when the law enforcement and the politicians and the prosecuting attorneys allow one racial group to get away with basically murder in many instances, but thieves and breaking and entering and stealing, you can't let anyone get away with it. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter what the racial component of the crime is. If there is a crime being done, they need to be arrested and prosecuted and jailed. End of story. And that's law and order. But if you start playing politics with the criminal justice system, then you're going to get what we have today, which is chaos.
Not to intervene.
80% of retailers are experiencing violent incidents. One is to tell folks you should not be interfering or apprehending folks if you do not have the training.
And while a punishment after calling the police for...
Yeah, I can understand that for especially the women involved in the retailing industry, if you see a crime happening, you should call the police, but not necessarily feel that you need to intervene. You should not try to tackle the person or try to wrestle them to the ground. I can understand that, especially in the case of women. In the case of men, it's a little different because What man is going to just sit there and let someone come into their store and basically steal things? If you're an employee and you see somebody rifling through, like for example, back in the day, I worked in the electronics department at Walmart. And if I'm behind the counter and some guy comes in, pushes me aside and starts pocketing all of the iPhones and all of the smartphones in the cabinet, what am I going to do? Am I going to just back away and just let this guy take all of these phones? No, it's totally insane. No, I'm going to shove him out of the way. I'm going to tell him, get out of here, and I'm going to make some kind of a physical effort to prevent him from committing a crime. Now, I'm aware that the fact that the higher-ups are worried about, well, there might be some incident of violence and the employee gets hurt or injured or even killed, and then he sues or the family sues the company for this accident that happened on the job or whatever. They're worried about a lawsuit or some other thing. So I can understand that. But it goes against human nature to allow some vigilante, some criminal, some thief to simply commit a crime right in front of you and not try to do anything. So you're telling people to go against their own human nature, and especially when you tell them not to call authorities. This is totally insane. And the retailers are inviting even worse.
Shoplifting might be head-scratching to some. Retail trade organizations say it might be more common than you think because some stores have relationships with law enforcement and don't want to waste resources on petty crime.
They don't want to, waste their time on what may be an entry-level shoplifting issue when they could be doing something else, because then they're not necessarily going to be as quick to respond the next time when they do need someone there.
Ferguson.
That argument is so weak and lame. First of all, law and order means law and order across the board. So if you start prioritizing these crimes and you start saying, well, we're not going to follow up or arrest anyone for under $1,000, which is a very common law now. Some of these liberal, leftist, democratic strongholds, cities especially, will say, well, if it's something under 1,000, we're not even going to try to follow up or investigate or even try to arrest anyone because it's not worth our time. Okay, well, you are basically encouraging more of that. And the criminals need to know that I don't care if you steal one shoe out of one shoe store, you're going to be called to the carpet on that. You're going to be arrested. You're going to be fined or jailed or whatever it takes, but you cannot allow people to steal and commit crimes and say, well, that's just a minor crime, we won't deal with that. No, if it's a crime, then you need to arrest them. This is crazy.
And Rogers say their actions led to their termination for vague reasoning.
They have a no tolerance policy.
They said because they have a zero tolerance policy.
We tried calling the store and reaching out to Lululemon's corporate offices and did not hear back. Both women now adjusting to their new lives after the April incident.
That was my sole income, so I did have to file for unemployment and use all of my savings to pay for my car payment.
It put us in a bit of a bind. My husband is self-employed, so we're trying to figure out insurance.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now in studio. Stephen, a lot of people are going to be confused by this, right? And again, I want to make it very clear. We reached out to Lululemon several times. Yep. But, I mean, it's not just petty theft, right? Because if it was one shirt, one pair of shorts, even though it's Lululemon, we're talking about armfuls of shirts. And those shirts are probably $100, $80 each, along with the pants that are $100 more. So we're talking about thousands of dollars worth of merchandise.
Exactly. It's not just a petty thief. It's not just a petty crime. It is a major theft. You cannot have the police ignoring this kind of crime. If you have the police ignoring this kind of crime, it's a total breakdown in society and it spreads. It's kind of like the principle of the window. If you have a vacant home and everything's fine, the windows are in place, but then somebody throws a rock through one window, and if that window isn't given attention and repaired within a certain framework, a week or two, then you're going to get more windows broken out. And then pretty soon you're going to get people entering the home, ransacking the home, just because of that one window that was not repaired after a certain time. That means you cannot set aside crime just because you think it's petty. You have to deal with the crime. And if it's wrong, if it's illegal to do that, they have to be arrested.
And they're just supposed to just let it happen?
Yeah, Lululemon, those clothes are not cheap. These employees say that they were let go because they violated a company policy. And the company, they actually sent us a letter. Rachel Rogers, one of the women in the story, sent us a letter saying they violated policy, but not specifying which policy they actually violated. It is a lot confusing to a lot of people. That attorney we spoke to for the Retail Trade Organization says that some companies do have this policy to not even call the police, to just be completely passive for employees' own safety when it comes to shoplifting. Of course, not all companies agree with that. Some of them do want the police called in each situation. It leaves a lot of gray area, a lot of confusion.
And why would the crooks stop stealing if they know that nothing's going to happen?
Good question.
But anyways, okay.
Exactly. Why would the crooks stop stealing if they know nothing is going to happen? Well, the answer is they will not stop stealing because they realize, and they're going to exploit this loophole in society that the liberal, leftist, radical Democrats are causing. This is an undermining of law and order. And we go back to Romans 13 and we say it is important for the citizens of a country to submit to the legal authorities of the state. Now, of course, that means if the legal authorities of the state are calling you and telling you to sin or forcing you to sin, you can resist that because you must obey God rather than man. But if they're telling you not to steal, if they're telling you that you must respect property rights, and you go ahead and steal, break and entering the store, or just walk right in the front of the store and start removing merchandise, shoplifting that is, that's a crime, okay? So you have to enforce that. That is law and order. It is God's will that theft and crime be enforced. And these people have to be held accountable. They have to be punished in some way, whether that's a fine or whether that's jail time or whether they actually have to go to prison or community service. They have to pay their debt to society if they're going to break the laws of society, because no society can last if people feel that they can break the laws with impunity. They can just simply go here and break the law and then go across the street and break the law, and the police aren't going to show up, or the company is not going to even report it as a crime. And they're simply going to get more bold, get more violent. They're going to try to steal more and bigger things, and it's going to lead to the breakdown of society. So we see the wisdom of God in His Word. We see the wisdom of God speaking to the politicians and the district attorneys and law enforcement. And the Word of God is telling them, hey, enforce the law, maintain order. This is your job. And if you need more police, one of the comments was, well, it takes us away from the more violent crimes. Well, then get more police. You have to enforce the law, or there's going to be total chaos and breakdown in society. Well, hope that's been a helpful commentary. And we will talk to you next week on another Christian Answers. God bless.